today we're going to be talking about diversity debt.
Diversity debt? Wow, it has been a while since I've heard that buzz phrase used. I did a video on the concept nearly 2 years ago, but haven't really heard it used since then. Now, I am always on the lookout for the next catchphrase concept that tries to take off in the realm of social justice and identity politics. Many people have tried to make theirs the next white fragility, a term that Dr. Robin DiAngelo has leveraged into a very lucrative career. So, I am very interested to hear that diversity debt is being used again, and this time across the pond in the UK. Given how confusing an idea diversity debt was the last time, let's see if 2 years' worth of incubation has helped to refine and actually define the term.
So, hi Scott, talking about the idea of diversity debt, could you explain that for us?
Yeah, so this is a concept that I came across just this year actually, but basically it's something that's kind of emerging in the startup world here in the UK, and as companies and founders and kind of everyone in the business world becomes more aware of the need for greater diversity and inclusion, especially in the technology industry that we cover, there's this concept of accruing diversity debt started coming up, and like any other debt, basically that the idea is that when you start a quickly growing company, you have to think very early on about what you want the workforce of that company to look like, because otherwise you hire very quickly and you hire people that you know.
You have to think about what you want the workforce to look like. So it's simply about optics, and a lack of correct optics creates diversity debt. And what exactly is diversity debt again?
And you acquire this diversity debt in your organization, which is very difficult to get rid of. It's much easier to start with the organization that you want it to look like in the future than to kind of rebuild it once you've already started developing that workforce.
So companies need to discriminate in their hiring practices on the basis of optics over merit from the very beginning in order to avoid accruing diversity debt. And what exactly is diversity debt again?
So that's the idea, and there's a lot of kind of techniques that are being developed now to really think about this issue and really think about what your company will look like in 5 years rather than what it will look like in 5 months and then worrying about it later down the line, which is often something with startups when you're in that kind of growth mindset that you kind of push a lot of things down the road. But this now has become such a big issue in the industry that people are starting to think about it a little bit earlier on.
Sorry, but you still have not defined what diversity debt actually is. And how does not hiring the employees with the right look create a debt? What is this debt comprised of? And who is this debt owed to as a result of the employees having the wrong look?
So is this just a problem for startups then?
So technically, yes.
Technically, yes? So that makes the answer no, doesn't it?
But obviously it's not a problem that is exclusively within startups.
So why did you say technically yes? You're really not instilling in me much confidence that you have any idea of what you are talking about.
The problem is that once diversity debt has been kind of accrued in larger organizations, as I mentioned, it's much more difficult to kind of redress that balance, because you need to either kind of aggressively hire into different kind of socioeconomic backgrounds or racial profiles or different kind of people that you don't have within your organization to get that diversity of voices.
So the way to work yourself out of diversity debt is to hire people on the basis of factors other than merit, such as socioeconomic factors and race. Got it.
That's much harder to do when you're already a large organization with a large established workforce. So the key is to kind of think about this stuff early on. Doesn't mean you can't solve it when you're bigger. It's just a lot more difficult.
And what steps can be taken to avoid diversity debt?
Well, I'll say that I have no idea, given that you have yet to actually define what diversity debt is. And yet, you've already been given the solution. You hire employees on the basis of optics rather than merit. Am I the only one listening here?
So there's quite a few, and I've got a few names here that I kind of want to name check because I went to this event at Google Campus where they talked about this, where I became aware of the issue.
You had no prior notion of diversity debt until you were made aware of it at a Google event. Google, where I have to assume from their metrics a massive amount of diversity debt is being accrued each and every year, given the company's legendary failings when it comes to workplace diversity.
And there was some really good advice. There was one woman there called Keji Mustafa, and she's the head of network and operations at a big VC firm called Connect here in the UK. And she talks really about kind of hiring for, not hiring for culture fit, hiring for mission fit.
Hiring for mission fit. But you just said to hire on the basis of socioeconomic background or on the basis of race.
You need to either kind of aggressively hire into different kind of socioeconomic backgrounds or racial profiles.
So, are race and economic circumstance both missions? I'm confused.
Culture fit is this kind of Silicon Valley term that kind of blew up with the Googles and the Facebooks, and everyone was like, oh, we need to hire for culture fit. Everyone needs to be, high growth and code first and all of this.
So, based on enthusiasm and skill, i.e., merit, that is culture fit, which is the exact opposite of what you have been suggesting. Got it.
And that kind of ended up meaning that people hired a lot of people that looked like them or thought like them. Again, accruing diversity debt.
Hiring people with an attitude similar to the company's values and goals is bad, because that obviously means hiring people who look like you do. Because obviously, skin color equates to a quality of thinking. And hiring people that are aligned with the company's values and who might happen to look like you creates diversity debt. Diversity debt, which has yet to be defined. So, to cure this, I assume you need to hire people who do not have a mindset commensurate to the company's goals, and specifically, who do not look like the person in charge of the hiring. Got it.
So what she said is it's really important to hire for kind of, can they do the job first and then worrying about culture next?
What? Can they do the job first, culture next? That's just the standard procedure of hiring someone in most companies. A, do they have the requisite skills? And B, do they seem like a good fit for the company or for the team they'll be on? That's not at all what you have been talking about. You have focused primarily on the appearance of the potential new hire. You've said nothing about merit up to this point. And, by the way, you have still not defined diversity debt.
And there was another speaker there on the day, actually, that was a former HR manager over at Google and Twitter. So her name's Caroline Chayot, and she's the talent partner now at a big VC firm, Atomico. But she said when she asked people at Google and Facebook, how do I kind of hire for culture fit? They said, can you spend 24 hours on an aeroplane with this person? And she went, fine. And she went and, as everyone else did, hired a load of people on that profile. What that means, though, is that you hire a lot of people that you're kind of friends with or that think like you, and you don't get that kind of diversity of voice within your organization. So that concept is starting to look quite dated now.
So, in order to avoid accruing diversity debt, you need to hire people who you cannot stand to be around. Got it.
In terms of other steps, there's another company called Talent Stack, really interesting business. They basically are building tools for organizations to start hiring with objectivity. So eliminating bias from your job adverts, eliminating bias from the language of your kind of hiring managers and the way that you go about hiring.
Do they eliminate bias on the basis of socioeconomic status or race? Because you told us earlier that those were the correct biases on which to make hiring decisions.
You need to either kind of aggressively hire into different kind of socioeconomic backgrounds or racial profiles.
Or, again, do you simply have no idea what you are talking about?
But also using a lot of technology and tools to just set up a consistent hiring process so that you're not kind of preferring a certain type of candidate over others and just kind of widening the net when it comes to hiring.
Widening the net by disqualifying people with a similar mindset, disqualifying people you feel comfortable being around, and disqualifying people who look like you do. That is widening the net. Got it.
It takes a lot of work. You're thinking a lot about process early on. You're thinking a lot about how you hire early on. And sometimes when you're in a very fast-moving startup environment, that's not the easiest thing to do.
You might also be thinking about the legal ramifications of hiring people on the basis of factors other than merit. Or maybe not, since that way of thinking seems to be so very, very old-fashioned.
That concept is starting to look quite dated now. So one of the other really key things to do is just to early on have someone in charge of talent. You see a lot more startups now with a head of talent or an HR person or just someone who thinks about these things every day, because you can't do everything when you're founding a company.
So maybe something like, I don't know, a chief diversity and inclusion officer? Golly, I wonder if that idea will ever catch on.
So having someone that really thinks about what your talent is going to look like in 1 to 5 years early on. Yes, it's an outlay in terms of hiring quite a senior person, but if you get the right person there, you're going to save yourself so many headaches further down the line.
It's a very interesting concept there. Thank you very much for that.
No worries, thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much for that. God, that's creepy. So, various discriminatory solutions laid out to help avoid an undefined threat to a company's bottom line, with the end solution being to place the responsibility entirely in the hands of a newly created position to worry about such things. Okay, let me put all of this into different terms to try and understand what we've just heard. First, I need a problem that I'm not going to bother defining. Let's call it synergistic malfeasance. Okay? What is synergistic malfeasance? That doesn't matter. Okay, companies suffer synergistic malfeasance when they do not use cigarette boxes for their employees to blow their noses. So, in order to avoid synergistic malfeasance, you need to stockpile as many cigarette boxes as you can. Now, I just happen to be in possession of a large quantity of cigarette boxes for your employees to blow their noses with. So, I'll tell you what, you put me in a paid position to distribute these cigarette boxes to your employees to blow their noses with, and I will solve your synergistic malfeasance problem. And yes, that is exactly the same scenario and solution structure on offer for addressing the issue of diversity debt. A problem that cannot be quantified, but with a ready solution of hiring people whose personal merit is a secondary consideration, at best. This is my first video of 2020. Welcome to the future, everyone. The future, which is our present.
That concept is starting to look quite dated now.
As always, thank you for watching.